Hello, my name is David Robertson, and this is another one of my educational blacksmithing videos. And today we will be talking about texturing and different uses of it, primarily under the air hammer, but these are applicable to hand hammering techniques. Here I'm hammering a disc, and I'm using two dies, top and bottom, that are like cross pins, and they stretch the disc out from the radius, and they create a strong texture on the disc of metal as well. We'll see that texture in a minute. You can see a little bit of it there, and it actually becomes more pronounced on the bottom side. And a close-up view. This started out as a flat plate, and you can see that there is a taper to it as well as a heavy texturing on the surface. Texture is one of those things that you can add quite easily. It does take more work, but it's not hard to do. Using a series of punches and chisels and hammer strokes, you can create different forms. Here I'm using a punch that was made out of just mild steel, and what it is a 3/4 inch by 1 inch block of mild steel that on the bottom has a series of random drill holes put into the surface, and that's what I'm hammering down onto the surface of the bar. So we'll see this in a moment. So they're just random, they're not very deep. It's just so that it will create an impression and leave the bump raised, if you will. And that's the texture you get on the bar. It's a random pattern, but it does look nice on a larger scale. So instead of using a large punch to create the texture, I'm now using a small punch. And this is like the rounded end of your finger. And again, I'm just doing random punch strokes all over the end of the bar. And this will create a series of divots into the bar. And this can be any shape that you want to make the punch. And you end up with a random overlapping, coarse, pebbly texture almost. The air hammer is a great tool for this. A treadle hammer would work as well. If you have your mechanical hammer set well, you could do this under that. Also by hand, although I'd use a longer punch, and I would hold the bar down on the top of the anvil. See a little bit of a texture from the distance there. That's the punch I use. It really is just a small piece of steel with a handle on it, with a rounded tip. The top should be rounded as well, sort of a crowned surface, so that when the air hammer strikes it, it doesn't skid around, it stays in one spot. And that's the type of texture you get. A random series of divots. The best thing with texture is to do contrast, to have a heavily textured section of steel beside a relatively smooth section of steel. Here's a plain piece of flat bar. It's 3/8 by 2, I think, and that's how it comes from the mill, completely smooth. And if you're working with line, you may not want to change that at all. I tend to work a lot with form, so I do change the shape and the texture on the surface. And here I'm just doing some random hammer blows, just with the flat dies, just enough to break the surface up so it looks like it's been worked a little bit. And that's enough to create a nice texture on a finished piece. And I would do this over the whole bar that I was working on. And you can see the contrast to the mill scale, where it just is straight from the rollers. This is a detail photo of a grave cross which I did for a gallery exhibit. And it shows contrasting textures. The central disc has very similar texture to the disc that I was showing you, and then the outside fins have a cross peen texture, and then the radial spokes have a smoother texture placed on them. Try using different forms of texture in your work. You can use a coarse texture, you can use smooth texturing, you can combine the two. You'll be surprised at how much life it adds to your work. Thank you very much for watching this video. For more information about blacksmithing, please see my website, artistblacksmith.com, and you can sign up for a free newsletter that provides tips and techniques, as well as discussions on blacksmithing. There's lots of information there. It's worth checking out. Thanks again. Bye for now.